Kiana Sage here from Being in Sync 366 video series. This is video 233. 233 videos on being in sync, on tips on how you can align your field to be more congruent within. I am Kiana Sage and I guide people to peace. I am not a therapist or a psychiatrist. I do not follow traditional dogmas. I am an energy healer who repatterns the field to align with your soul mission, the reason for being alive here on this planet. Today I wanted to talk about something that really redirects our energies from our purpose, which is stress. So stress carries patterns of discord, patterns of misalignment. Stress causes us to have a physical reaction to our reality, and it always comes in patterns. So how you internalize stress will be really impactful for how you can realign or misalign repeatedly, right? So most people know that there are patterns to everything, right? Hey Joe, good to see you here. I just hit my hat. So we have patterns of stress. So if we don't know what those patterns of stress are, we don't know when those patterns of stress just repeat over and over and over again. And sometimes these patterns of stress can become so ingrained into who we are and how our mind and our bodies are aligned or misaligned. Hey Eric, yay, good to see you. So glad you're here. Ishtabrat, nice to see you here. This is not a gay pride stream. This is about being in sync, but hey, do your thing. Sadif is saying, you always ignore Muslims. I don't think I agree with that, but that's certainly your perception, which you're entitled to hold, or you can choose to see that this stream is not about religion as much as it's about alignment. So that's your choice. I don't know you, but I was mesmerized by your beauty. Oh, well, thank you. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about patterns of stress. So first of all, I would ask you to identify your patterns of stress. Do you know what they are? Do you know what, who, or what situations or triggers that you have? Triggers can often be triggers of stress as well. So you want to know those things. So this came up for me to share with you because I have a client and a friend, two different people, and they have a pattern of stress of when they are stressed, they go to the same food. Oh, thanks, Eric likes my hat. Thank you. I thought I'd mix it up on this Sunday. And I like the gold palm tree. I like palm trees. So this client, when they're stressed, they go and they eat lots and lots of sugar. So that's an indication. So they know when they eat sugar, they're stressed. But what you want to identify is what is the triggers of stress in general. Like, when do you know you're becoming stressed? Is it after it's already exemplified in you and your field, or do you have an awareness of, oh, this is going to be a stressful event, and let me mitigate that stress by having a strategy? And I think Joe is saying his wife stresses him out. Well, then she's doing her job. Joe, your wife is doing her job. Your job is to become neutral to what your wife is trying to teach you. So what is it that your wife is teaching you that you need to learn? Yes, the background is real. It's a real tree. Clockwork is saying when they are stressed, they don't eat. See, that would be a pattern. So you want to be able to not, okay, a couple things about patterns of stress. You want to identify what do you do when you're under stress? So you write those down. Then you want to do what are the triggers of stress for you? You write those down. Now that you have like awareness of those stressors. Like for me, if I don't get stressed very often, but if I do get stressed, the first thing I notice is my breath is changed. So I will constrict my breathing. It'll get shallow. So that's an indicator for me in my physical body that I'm stressed. I try not to get to the point where I'm eating lots of food out of stress. So you don't want to have your stress be magnified by eating foods that make it worse. So for example, alcohol is one of those things that people often do when they're stressed, but it actually makes everything worse. Makes you feel worse physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. However, that's a go-to for a lot of people. So you want to make a list of all, like, what do you do when you're stressed? What do you do? What are the triggers of the stress? And then what would be strategies for mitigating those stressors? So those are really technical things, but a lot of people do not do fundamental things. They do not understand what stresses them out. So you want to have an understanding of what is Joe, your wife she says, I need help. I work out of town 10 months of the year. Well, it sounds like the separation between you two stresses you both out. So when you come back together, it's a relearning and it's a reintegration. And so maybe you guys could talk about the way she stresses you out. Maybe you can write those down, and things that she does that trigger you to be stressed, and things that you do to trigger her to be stressed. If you guys come up with these lists and then you have awareness about them, then you realize that she is not the cause of your stress. She's just simply triggering them. So the person is never the issue. The trigger is the issue. The person who triggers you is not the issue. The trigger is. So you want to identify the trigger so you can mitigate it. I hope that helps, Joe. And it sounds like, gosh, you work away from home a lot. So once you have your awarenesses of what stresses you out, then you can start to strategize. So this particular client is not aware that they have the power to change the stressors, because stress is always going to come down to perception. So that's the common denominator. Stress is always a perception. So how you are perceiving a situation, an event, a person, an experience, that is the root of the stress is always going to be perception. When you know that you get to choose how you are perceiving and experiencing something, that changes it all. But you can't jump usually to perception unless you've gotten the awareness of it all. Does that make sense to you? Joe, it sounds like being away from home for that long can be stressful for sure. Russian dog, hello. Somebody's asking, no, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not. I don't. When I'm stressed, I already told you, I notice my breath. So if I get stressed. Scott is saying, yes, that's me. I'm an alcoholic, 24, and it's so hard. Okay, Scott. So, Scott, it's hard because you're perceiving it's hard. But what if you decided that it wasn't going to be hard at all? that you can make a change to really. So when we are going to things like alcohol or drugs, marijuana, any kind of thing that messes with your how your brain is operating, how your systems operate, any substance that does that, including caffeine. So anything that you are doing that is messing with how you are internally communicating, which is, let's just use alcohol as the example since you so bravely put that in here. What I would say is that you can make a choice that it's going to be easier than you think. Okay? That doesn't mean it won't be challenging, but it's going to be easier than you think. Okay? Because a lot of things are easier than we think when we allow them to be easier. So you shift your perception by changing the way you are thinking and changing what you believe. So Scott, right now you have a belief that it's hard. What I'm offering to you is that when you have an awareness of a belief that is limiting, it's a limiting belief, you can change it. So when you identify that limiting belief, you change it to something that is realistic. Like, it's going to be easier than I think. Then you start to test it out. Let me just go for this. Next time I am going to go have a drink to escape, because that's what most people are doing with alcohol. They want to escape their life. I want you to choose to face the challenges. Choose to face those things that you have been ignoring or avoiding or not wanting to see or not wanting to deal with, and choose to be the man that addresses those situations. And you just choose to do it the best way you know how. And that's without alcohol. Because whenever you have alcohol, that's going to distort what you are perceiving. So you want to have that out of your system. I hope that was helpful, Scott. I don't want to tell you what to do. I'm just going to give you options, because I know that it can be challenging. Addiction can be very challenging, but it's not impossible. So I've worked with lots of people with lots of different types of addiction. McLovin is back. I even fell short of breath when I am thinking of some stressful events in the future. McLovin, that is a good awareness to have. So when you know that your breath is short, it's being constricted, that's when you bring your attention, you put your hand on your heart and take a deeper breath. Okay, and take 3 deeper breaths. And then if you know you're thinking of a stressful event in the future, bring yourself back to present time with, I am here, I'm sitting in this chair, I'm breathing, I am here, I am here, I am here. 3 times. Russian Dog says he never smiles. Well, why? I have one client many years ago that he made it a point to smile at everybody in his building. Not because he wanted to smile, but because he realized he wasn't smiling, so he wanted to change that pattern. So now that you have a knowing and awareness of a pattern of a smile, which, by the way, smiles change your chemistry. So he chose to greet people all day long because it felt better. And then he actually had people coming up to him, thanking him for smiling and recognizing them because they felt invisible. So you just never know. Crazy pundit cream? I don't know. I don't have my glasses with me today. He's saying stress is an illusion. Well, everything is an illusion. We live in a holographic world. So your perception is the reality. So we need to learn to shift our perceptions, shift our beliefs, shift our experiences. And we learn that through understanding that we have the power. Scott is saying, my body is already degrading. Well, you can turn that around, Scott. You could choose that. You could choose to go on a longevity kick And you know what? And I'm not going to degrade. I'm going to actually allow my body to thrive. What am I doing that is degrading my body? What do I need to do to thrive? Start looking at those things. There's a guy on YouTube, and he's also on Instagram, Brian Johnson. He's a little strange, but he has some good data about the longevity stuff. There are things that you could do to shift and change so your body doesn't degrade. Musaf is saying, I am exit or not. I don't know what you're saying there. Thomas Powell, the way it is, Russian dog. Oh, you guys are having your own chat. Scott is saying, any tactics for a 24-year-old alcoholic? I've been one since 17 and it's hard to stop. Well, I am not a specialist in AA, but I would say the first thing to do is to disidentify yourself with being an alcoholic. So I know that goes counter to what they promote, but I would say your true identity is not anything outside you. It's going to be your pure connection with God, source, creator energy. So that would be number one. Number one is to identify with who you want to be, Scott, like who you truly are. You're a child of God. And since you're a child of God, of source energy creation, you can do anything when you make a conscious choice to do it. So, Scott, I would say first, change how you're identifying. Identify yourself with with something that's true and pure and in alignment with the natural laws. And that would not be to call yourself a name or identify with something like that. So start to describe yourself differently. That would be the number one thing that I recommend. And I'm pretty sure that AA goes against that. But I don't know all the rules of AA because I'm not a subscriber to that dogma or that philosophy, although I know a lot of people have found it very useful. So that could be something you could go feel that out and see if that's useful for you. One of the tenets of AA is that they have an intention. And so what I would say is to be very intentional, Scott. Not just everyday intention, but every moment. So I would re-identify yourself. I would make a huge, real connection with your heart. And third, I would become intentional. And I have a class on this YouTube here. So go find the intention setting to synchronicity class. It's free. And start learning how to be intentional. Because if you do not direct your intention and your attention, it will get run over with alcohol. And what I would say is that all addiction, not just exclusive to alcohol, but all addiction is going to come from a lack of love. So you got to fill yourself up with love, and you do that by connecting with your heart. You don't look for something outside you to distract you or fulfill you. You start filling yourself up. Hello, sunshine. Thomas does not have anything nice to say about what I'm saying. Do I have advice on getting over traumatic experiences? Well, the peace program that I offer is all about clearing traumas specifically. Traumatic experiences, in my experience of healing, and I think there's many ways to heal, but I would say the reason why traumas don't get healed is because most people avoid going back to them. But traumas, when you see a trauma, let's just say, like, so I'll just tell you mine. My first memory is from 15 months old. That's very young. And it's of my parents arguing and having a violent exchange. That was my first childhood memory. Now, that's not a pleasant memory, but it was very traumatic. When you understand that as a child you have a memory of an experience, any trauma is going to have cellular memory. What you want to do is see it from an adult perspective in connection to source energy and see and witness that trauma from your heart and see the healing and the love that was around you, that guided you throughout that situation. And that will help transmute it. What I will say for certain is that traumas need to be cleared through all timelines, and they also need to be cleared through all bodies. So physical, mental, emotional, spiritual bodies, all your light bodies. I hope that helps. Joe is saying divorce. I don't understand your question, Joe. I don't think it's about divorce. I think it's about having honest conversation. You can't have honest conversation with your wife about triggers, then maybe what are you guys talking about? Maybe that's the trigger, is that you guys don't have modes of communication that are functional. And that would make sense if you're out of town for 10 months a year. And I suspect that's a re-entry issue, right? McLovin, I'm stressed out because my parents saying some words of sentences which I don't like. So you allow other people to stress you out, is what I'm reading. And so what would happen if you realized that you are the one who's empowered to address the stress, not your parents. You can't stop them from being who they are. They are who they are, but you have the power to address your stress. So the one thing that's coming to my mind is, why would you go into agreement to somebody else being able to stress you out? That's the first thing that's coming to mind. And the second thing is, does that make sense for you? Like, oh, if I have the power to determine what's going to stress me out or not, and I am just going to accept them for who they are and what they say, even though I don't prefer it, I accept it. Now I don't have to be triggered by it. Try that. I live in California. Somebody's asking me where I live. I am confused between bipolar disorder and multiple personality disorder. Can you differentiate? I am not a psychologist and I do not ascribe to diagnoses. So I would say that a lot of diagnoses do not take into consideration the spiritual journey. And I don't really want to go in deeper because I think it can get quite confusing here, but I would suggest if you are ascribing to disorders, then you speak with somebody who believes in disorders. I believe in the spiritual journey, and I believe our medical system does not address how the spiritual journey works. And because of that, they use diagnoses to pigeonhole people into a way of being that is misaligned and also dependent on a lot of pharmaceuticals. I will say that there is a video, and I don't know if I can go on here and look at it, but I will put it in the comments after this video, and it basically goes through the whole process. You should be aware of this, Muthia. I don't know if I'm saying your name right, but you should be aware of how diagnoses actually come to be. And if you understood how diagnoses are actually done, you probably would understand why I don't agree with it. I hope that helps you. Open Eyes is saying, find Christ and pray to him to take away. He will change you. Okay, so first of all, Open Eyes, what you're suggesting is that something outside of yourself is more powerful than you. But when you are a co-creator, you don't give your authority over to anybody. You're born a co-creator in this life. So nothing's going to come in and save you. You have to save yourself. That's why you're here. You have to learn the skills and co-create in alignment with the natural laws, which are the laws of God. Okay? Ryan says he wants to drink. Hey, escapism contrasts, there's a lot of dark energies that feed off of people who want to escape, and before you know it, you could be in trouble. So I would just suggest that. That might not be the best. Gregory is saying, I'm not saying this to try and pick up pot, but he's suggesting that pot is safer than alcohol and cigarettes. He's just saying that. I don't know that anything that's going to be causing you distress in how you operate in life is one is better than the other. If you are feeling love of life, then you're not going to be drawn to have substances lead your life, period. Open your eyes. Open your eyes is saying he smokes cannabis oil and it helps him avoid alcohol. They're both equally vulnerable. So anytime that you're going to substances, it creates what's called a rip or a hole in your field. If you don't know how to keep your energy field intact, those rips or holes leave vulnerabilities for other, let's just say, unfriendly things to come through and siphon your energy, siphon your life force, start infiltrating your mind, having your mind think things that we wouldn't normally think. So I'm not a proponent of any drugs, anything. I have a breathing exercise on this video series on here. It's called The Breath of Life, if you want to go check that out. It's only 10 minutes, but it's specifically for stress. And it's 2 breaths in, exhale out. Anybody who's stressed, the first thing that's going to happen is your breath is going to constrict. Now, I just happen to notice that before I notice other things. But some people notice sugar is their go-to thing. Sometimes people work out vigorously. Sometimes working out becomes the crutch. What you want to do is make sure that you're addressing the source of stress. Hey, Zier, good to see you here. Ryan. Ryan is saying, take the deepest of breaths because it ain't going to work. Well, Ryan, that's your belief. Keep it to yourself. Do I watch Andrew McLovin is saying, do I watch Andrew Huberman? I have watched some of his stuff, specifically around the cold plunge, but no, I don't watch a lot of his stuff. I don't know how to say your name. Kakiran? What I would say is go check out that 10-minute breathing video and go watch the intention setting. Your anxiety, and I have videos on here where I talk, and you'd have to go find it, but I talk specifically about learning how to turn your nervous system off. Go watch those videos, because once you learn how to turn off your fight or flight and reconnect your nervous system appropriately, it will help. It will help you a ton. Okay, Soldier Boy. I got a cap today. Yes, I do. AI is saying, so I worship a Jew. Jew was a Jew. I don't know what you're saying, AI. I don't see a question there. It's not a South Carolina hat. It's just a hat with a palm tree. Ryan, what are you a specialist in exactly? Energy psychology. I said that at the beginning of the video, but you probably didn't hear that. I help people to repattern their fields in alignment with the soul. So we have physical, mental, emotional, spiritual bodies and light bodies. And then when those bodies are running incongruent with your physical, right, you're going to have problems. So I help people realign to peace, to God, to their life purpose. That's what I do every day, all day. Some people call it energy healing. I call it energy psychology because patterns are always running in our field. And when we start to learn how to see and sense and experience those patterns, it changes how we experience our life. Ryan is saying, yeah, lots of love and good intentions should fix it. Well, Ryan is a naysayer here, Ryan. Why you got to be so negative? What's your alternative to having a positive intentions and really directing your thoughts instead of letting everything run you? I'm not a proponent of any energies running me. RJ is saying, don't speak to politicians and big pharma. Three reasons why you're voting for. I'm not doing political stuff. I hate to ask you to elaborate, but you just spoke about how trauma needs to be cleared through all timelines, all bodies. Could you explain what you mean by that? So often, we are not just physical beings, we are multi-dimensional beings. And because we are multi-dimensional, we must be able to clear through all timelines. So time is its own rabbit hole. However, for this physical life, when we become aligned and congruent, so let's just say, like I mentioned myself, I had a trauma. My first memories at 15 months old of my parents fighting and having a violent fight. When I had the memory of that as an adult and I look back at that memory, I see that experience differently. When I see that experience differently, I see my little self, my little girl self, and then I also see myself through my heart. And when you're able to see yourself through your heart and you use your conscious breath and you use intention, that clears the energy from that time, let's just say that time, that significant trauma event, and it starts to clear the path. So that can no longer impact you at this adult stage. And so when you do that through your physical body, your mental body, your emotional body, and your spiritual body, it clears through all the bodies because you want them to clear through all the bodies because you don't want it to get stuck in any body. And when it gets stuck in the body, you can't clear it cellularly. So you want everything that happens has to be cleared cellularly ultimately. And if it's stuck in any of the bodies, it won't clear through the cells. So we all know we have cellular memory. That's why when you get triggered, it triggers that trauma. So that's why you want to clear through all bodies so you can eventually get to clearing through the cellular trauma. And once you clear the cellular trauma, and you could do that yourself, you could teach yourself how to clear from the heart. The heart will clear everything. Once you are unblocked and untethered to those beliefs that think that you need to go outside yourself to get healing, you could do anything. Consciousness is how you heal. It's kind of deep. I mean, this is a deep question that you're asking. I'm just looking for questions here. Okay, Eric, good to see you here. Gary is saying, energy psychology. How should I calm myself from PTSD? Well, the first thing you need to do is connect to your heart. And you need to not be afraid of the trauma. So there's also the fear component, which we have a lot of programming in our environment about fear. But you need to be willing to look, see, and sense your experience from a higher perspective of consciousness. That higher perspective is going to be connected from your heart. I mean, this is what I do, Gary, in the Peace program. And then you wouldn't have the PTSD. I think part of the issue with people with trauma is that they avoid the trauma and they don't never heal it. And because they're in avoidance, you can't heal it. You can't heal what you are denying. I think that's the simplest way to say that we must look at things and be willing to see them from a different perspective, from a different point of view, from a higher point of consciousness. McLovin is asking, what is the tree behind me? That's called a juniper. Golden Codex, energy cleanser. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it for sure. Or energy neutralizing for sure. So all your traumas can be neutralized. Great information. Oh, good, Oliver. I'm glad you found it helpful. Positive is asking, what is the difference between lazy and unmotivated? That's a really good question. I would say, I'm just speaking in general here, but I would say there's a lack of love of life. So lazy is going to have a lack of love of life. Unmotivated, I would say lack of direction. So the direction is causing the unmotivation. The lazy is just not loving life enough. So they don't want to do anything and they want to escape. That's escapism consciousness. I think I have a video titled Escapism Consciousness. McLovin is saying my biggest motivation is death. Is that right or not? Well, I would challenge you, McLovin, to look at what do you believe about death? Because a lot of people's beliefs about death are very much three-dimensional, meaning that it's based on what they've been taught on earth, not realizing that the soul is eternal and there is no death, really. So sit with that one. So now, if that's your biggest motivation is death, now you've just been mind-fucked about death. So, Gary is saying, I really like this, please. Please elaborate on the PTS consequences coming back to you. So what you're speaking to, Gary, is repeating patterns. And that's oftentimes, so first of all, I would say, Gary, is if you're on medication, that would cause some blockers in how your brain is operating. So that's something you want to look at. But repeating patterns is what PTSD is. It's an anticipation of, right? So it's a bunch of patterns that are repeating. So the first thing I would do in a session is like go to the source of what's causing that to repeat. And there are many things that cause things to repeat in your patterns. There's all kinds of hooks, tethers, cords, tentacles, programming, conditioning, belief systems. I mean, that's just 8 that I rattled off. That would cause repeating patterns. So the consequences of you not being willing to, let's just say, challenge your beliefs, like, so the belief that you will always have PTSD is often what most people believe. They think once you have a trauma, you'll always have the trauma. But that's not the case. It's not true. You don't have to identify yourself with a diagnosis. PTSD is a flag that is calling for your attention. And what most people want to do is look the other way. And that's the problem. That's why it continues to fire, because it hasn't been healed. All trauma wants to do is be healed, which is why I created the Peace Program. I call it the Peace Program because so many people are what I call walking wounded. We have traumas that we don't know how to deal with, so we just don't heal them, and then we walk around wounded and wonder why we get so angry, irritated, frustrated, can't sleep, go drink, go do all these things. Walking wounded, that's the reason, in my opinion. I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I do energy psychology. So that means that all of our patterns are running in a particular way, and the psychology is knowing how to switch those patterns so they can be neutralized, transmuted, and healed. That's real. Energy psychology is really how we heal. Positive Trait is saying, thank you for your time. Oh, good. You subscribed. All right. I'm so glad. I hope you found this helpful. So the key with stress, I'm just going to wrap this up with the topic, which is patterns of stress. The most important thing about the patterns of stress is, number one, you identify your patterns. What do you do when you're under stressed? What do you do, Gary, when you are having flashes of trauma? What is it that happens to you? What do you notice in your body physiology? What do you notice in your behaviors? Write those things down. And then, what are you doing to mitigate those things from happening? If you're taking a pill, smoking pot, drinking alcohol, those are not the way. You want to have behaviors that are healthy. So what are the healthy strategies so you don't go to the things like overeating and eating sugar or craving foods? Like, those are your body signals saying, hey, hello, something's going on here. I need help. Well, I'm not a therapist, so I'm not telling you to go to a therapist. I would never recommend that. I rarely recommend people go to a therapist, except as a disclaimer that that's not what I am. And if you feel like you need to go to a therapist, then go. Tyga's saying he's got a major problem and the doctor said you need a psychologist, but I never went. And I kept getting palpitations and chest problems. Well, that's your body telling you, attention, attention. So you went to a therapist and it was bad health. And they said you were fine at 23. Look, if you're getting heart palpitations and shortness of breath, you need to go within. Your body is calling for attention, and if you don't know how to listen to your body, you need to go and learn how to listen to your body. There's a book, and I've recommended this before. It's called When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate. He's a doctor from Canada. Excellent book. But your body always will signal you before something's going to happen. Okay, Gary. Gary's saying, I really like your views, feeling better, but addiction is going like a stress buster. I'm not sure what you're saying there, Gary, but I'm glad that you're finding this supportive. I should just do a whole, tomorrow's stream is going to be on addiction, okay? Tomorrow I'm going to be talking about addiction. which is different than stress. I'm just talking about work stress, regular life stresses, and strategies. Addiction is like a whole mother load of other things. And in fact, it's probably going to have to be a series. But tomorrow's Monday, I will start the series on addiction. Okay? And then I'm just going to read this one. I think in some kind of sort of cosmic way, I was meant to find the stream. Yesterday, I had an episode and I need to stay home from work. Okay, go find the breathing class and then go find the intention setting. It's a 7-day class. And then let me know tomorrow, come back on the stream and let me know how you're doing with your intention setting. If you get intentional, you will have less stress. I promise you that. Okay? I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for being on this live stream today about stress patterns. I had no idea it was going to lead into a new topic, but the topic of addiction is clearly something that needs to be addressed from a different perspective. Now, this is not going to be a prescriptive for everybody, one size fit all, because, you know, we're all unique. And I think that's the thing that we must understand about stress is that everybody internalizes stress different. But if you don't have awareness of how you're internalizing stress and how you're behaving when you're stressed out, you cannot make changes. That's why you got to be aware. What do I do when I'm stressed out? What are my behaviors? And then you got to start addressing what can I do that would be better than what I'm doing. And you start leveling up slowly. And as you level up, you change your level of access to consciousness. Now, for those of you who are really interested in less stress, the breathing, the breath of life is a 10-minute video where I talk about where I learned about breath from. And I've been practicing conscious breathing, gosh, for probably 20 years now. And the one that I teach in that class is so simple and just 5 minutes a day. And if you're really stressed or really have addiction, if you did this breathing 20 minutes a day and you broke it up into 4 segments, you would be less stressed by the 7th day. Okay? Well, you know, being in sync, Taiga, is all about lifestyle. It's all about being in a lifestyle in alignment with your soul. Being in sync is all about alignment to the soul. And if you're in disconnection from the soul, well, you're going to struggle. Everybody who's struggling is in disconnection. So we got to reconnect with our heart, reconnect with our soul, connect with our spirit, connect with what we believe God, sovereign, freedom is. Connect with that. That's who we are truly meant to be. Anyways, you guys have been great. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for your time, your questions, your vulnerability and sharing. And tomorrow's stream, we got it. We're going to start with addiction. And so if you have questions, let me know. Thank you so much, you guys. I love you guys. See you tomorrow. Addiction is the topic. Oh my gosh, it's going to be big. It's going to be big. Hopefully, I might have to break that up into a couple streams. Have a great day, you guys. I'm Kiana Sage, and I guide people to peace. Okay, Gary, we'll see you tomorrow.